I woke up with one kidney and a lie that would destroy everything I thought I knew about family. The scar ran 7 inches across my left side, still pink and tender 4 months after surgery. Every morning I traced it with my fingertips, remembering the moment I'd said yes without hesitation, the moment I'd thought I was saving my brother's life. That scar was supposed to be a badge of honor, proof that when it mattered most, I'd been there for Tyler. Instead, it became a monument to the worst betrayal I could have imagined, one that would land my own brother in federal prison and expose an organ trafficking ring that had mutilated 8 people for profit. The phone call came on a Tuesday in March 2022, while I was finishing a 12-hour shift framing houses in the Phoenix heat. Tyler's name lit up my screen, and I almost didn't answer. We'd been close growing up, 2 brothers against the world after our parents died, but his addiction and prison time had carved distance between us. Still, he was blood. Derek. His voice cracked, raw with something that made my stomach drop. I need to tell you something. I climbed down from the scaffolding, my boots hitting concrete with a hollow thud. The sun was setting, painting the half-built houses in shades of orange and red that suddenly felt ominous. What's wrong? I'm dying. Kidney failure, stage 4. The doctors say I have maybe 6 months without a transplant. The world tilted. I grabbed the scaffolding pole to steady myself. What? How long have you known? 3 months. Derek, I'm on the transplant list, but the wait time is 5 years. I don't have 5 years. He paused. I need a kidney. You're my only hope. You're my brother. If you're a match, if you're willing to donate, I could live. I didn't hesitate. I'll get tested tomorrow. Looking back now, I can see how perfectly he played me. How every word was calculated, every emotion manufactured. But in that moment, standing in that empty construction site, with the Phoenix desert stretching out around me, all I felt was love and determination. I would save my brother. Nothing else mattered. The testing process took 3 weeks. Tyler was there for some of it, looking gaunt and gray in a way I thought was the disease eating him from the inside. He kept thanking me, kept calling me his hero, kept saying he didn't deserve a brother like me. That last part, at least, turned out to be true. You're a perfect match, Dr. Ramon Cortez told me in his office. He was in his 50s, distinguished looking with silver hair and an expensive suit. 6 out of 6 HLA markers. It's extremely rare, even between siblings. When can we schedule it? July 12th. He pulled up a calendar on his computer. I should have questioned why I never met any of Tyler's supposed medical team except Dr. Cortez. I should have asked to see his medical records, proof that he was actually dying. But when someone you love tells you they're dying, you don't interrogate them. You believe them. You help them. That's what family does. That's what I thought family did. I told my foreman I needed 6 weeks off for surgery. They couldn't legally fire me, but they also didn't have to pay me. I calculated the loss. $12,000 I wouldn't earn. $12,000 I couldn't afford to lose. But what's $12,000 compared to your brother's life? My girlfriend Rachel wasn't as understanding. 6 weeks unpaid leave? Derek, we can barely make rent as it is, and you're just going to give him a kidney. What if something goes wrong? He's my brother. He's dying. Is he? She looked at me with those sharp brown eyes that could cut through bullshit like a laser. Have you seen his medical records? Talked to his doctors? Or are you just taking his word for it? I felt anger flash hot in my chest. You think he's lying about dying? I think Tyler has a history of addiction and manipulation. I think he spent 3 years in prison for fraud. I think you have a blind spot when it comes to him. If you can't support me in this, then maybe you should leave. She did. Packed a bag that night and stayed at her sister's place. I told myself she'd come around, that once Tyler was healthy again, she'd understand why I had to do this. The surgery was scheduled for 6 a.m. on July 12th. I arrived at Phoenix General at 4:30, unable to sleep, my stomach twisted in knots. Tyler met me in the pre-op area, hospital gown matching mine, his face arranged in an expression of gratitude and fear. Last chance to back out, he said, but his eyes were locked on mine with an intensity that felt almost predatory. I'm not backing out. We're going to get through this together. Together, he echoed, and for just a second, something flickered across his face. Something that might have been guilt or calculation or triumph. Then it was gone, replaced by what looked like brotherly affection. I'll never forget this, Derek. Never. The anesthesiologist came, explained the process, started my IV. I felt the cold rush of sedative entering my bloodstream, felt the world begin to blur and soften around the edges. My last conscious thought was that I was doing the right thing, that this sacrifice would mean something. Count backwards from 100, someone said. 100, 99, 98. Tyler's face hovered above me, smiling. 97, 96. And then nothing. I woke up in recovery 6 hours later, my left side screaming with pain that cut through the morphine haze like broken glass. A nurse adjusted my IV, checking my vitals. The surgery went perfectly, she said. Your kidney was beautiful and healthy. Your brother is very lucky. How is Tyler? He's recovering well. You should be proud. You saved his life. That's what I thought. That's what I believed for 4 months, through the pain and the slow recovery, through the medical bills and the lost wages, through Rachel leaving for good and the scar tissue forming thick and tough under my skin. I thought I'd done something heroic. I thought wrong. November in Phoenix is beautiful, temperature dropping to something almost comfortable. I was back at work, moving slower than before but functional, the scar tissue pulling tight whenever I bent or lifted. The recovery had been harder than predicted. Some mornings, I couldn't bend over to tie my shoes without the incision site screaming. I'd tried calling Tyler a few times in those early weeks, wanting to know how he was healing. He never answered. His voicemail box was full. I told myself he was probably overwhelmed with medical appointments. After work one Thursday, I stopped at O'Malley's, a bar near the construction site where the crew sometimes gathered. I wasn't much of a drinker anymore. The medical team had warned me to be careful with alcohol, that my remaining kidney needed to work harder now, that I should avoid anything that might stress my one remaining organ. I was nursing a single beer, talking to Jake from the crew about a problem with the electrical subcontractor when I saw Tyler at the far end of the bar. He looked healthy. Better than healthy. He looked robust, his skin glowing with color I hadn't seen in years. His eyes were clear, not jaundiced. His face was fuller, like he'd gained weight instead of losing it to disease. And he was laughing, surrounded by people I didn't recognize, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand. As I watched, he downed it in one swallow, not sipping carefully like someone on immunosuppressants should, but throwing it back like a man who had nothing to worry about. Then he signaled the bartender for another. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. Tyler, who was supposed to be avoiding alcohol. Tyler, who was supposed to be on anti-rejection medications that made drinking dangerous. Tyler, who looked like he'd never been sick a day in his life. My scar itched suddenly, intensely, like my body was trying to tell me something my brain refused to accept. I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly against the floor. I was already moving toward Tyler, my heart hammering against my ribs. Tyler! He turned, and for just a second I saw panic flash across his face. Then he recovered, breaking into a wide smile. Derek. Hey man, what are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing. I stared at the whiskey glass in his hand. Should you be drinking? I thought alcohol was off limits after a transplant. Oh that. He waved his hand dismissively. The doctor said a little bit is fine, and the transplant worked great, man. I feel amazing, like I got a whole new lease on life. Something was wrong. Every instinct I had was screaming at me. How are your anti-rejection meds going? Nothing serious, little nausea here and there, but totally manageable. He clapped me on the shoulder. Thanks to you, I'm going to be around for a long time. I want to see your medical records. His smile froze. What? Your transplant records. Follow-up appointments, lab results. I want to see them. Derek, why would you? Show me. We stared at each other across the noise of the bar. Then Tyler laughed, but it sounded hollow. You don't trust me. Show me the records, Tyler. Fine. Whatever. I'll bring them by your place this weekend. I left the bar with my hand shaking, pulled out my phone in the parking lot, and called Phoenix General. It took 3 transfers before I reached someone in the transplant department. I'm calling about my brother's transplant. Tyler Sullivan. The surgery was July 12th. There was a pause, the sound of typing. I'm sorry, sir, but I don't see any record of a Tyler Sullivan receiving a kidney transplant this hospital in July or any other month this year. The parking lot seemed to spin around me. Streetlights blurred into halos. That's impossible. I donated my kidney to him. Dr. Ramon Cortez performed the surgery. Let me check something. More typing. I see a record of you having kidney removal surgery on July 12th, yes, but there's no corresponding recipient surgery scheduled for that day. Your kidney was harvested, but what? My voice came out strangled. Sir, I think you need to speak with hospital administration. This doesn't look right at all. The phone slipped from my hand. I bent to pick it up, and the motion pulled at my scar, that 7-inch reminder of what I'd sacrificed. What I'd given freely, believing in family, believing in love. I don't remember driving home. The next thing I knew, I was standing in my bathroom, staring at the scar in the mirror. 7 inches of puckered pink tissue, still tender, still healing. I traced it with my fingertips, this mark that was supposed to represent something noble. My phone rang. Rachel, I couldn't bring myself to answer. The phone stopped ringing. Started again. Stopped. Started. I sank down onto the bathroom floor and stared at the scar. If Tyler hadn't received my kidney, where had it gone? Who was walking around with part of me inside them? I dry heaved over the toilet. Nothing came up. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, and even that was a distant memory from a different life when I'd still believed my brother was fundamentally good. Rachel arrived 20 minutes later, let herself in with the key she'd never returned, found me still on the bathroom floor. She didn't say anything, just sat down beside me. I should have listened to you, I said finally. This isn't your fault. What's wrong is what Tyler did with that trust. The attorney I hired, Haley Brennan, was in her 40s with gray-streaked hair and the kind of sharp intelligence that made me feel simultaneously comforted and terrified. She listened to my story without interrupting. This is serious, she said. If what you're describing is true, if your brother and this doctor conspired to harvest your kidney under false pretenses, we're talking about federal crimes, organ trafficking, conspiracy, fraud. Can you prove it? I have someone who can. She called Justin Park, a medical investigator who specialized in healthcare fraud. Justin arrived that afternoon, listened to my story, and nodded grimly. Organ trafficking rings are more common than people think. The waiting list for kidneys is 5 years minimum. There are people willing to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to skip that list. You think Tyler sold my kidney? I think someone paid a lot of money for it. Give me 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't focus on work. I kept touching the scar, kept thinking about some stranger walking around with part of me inside them, kept imagining Tyler counting money while I recovered from unnecessary surgery. Rachel called once. I heard through Jake what's going on. Derek, I'm so sorry. No, I said, which was a lie. I needed everything. Justin called on day 13. I've got it, all of it. You need to come to Haley's office, now. The evidence was spread across the conference table like pieces of a nightmare puzzle. First, Tyler's medical records, or rather his fake medical records. Justin pulled up documents on his laptop. Dr. Cortez created an entire false patient history, lab results showing kidney failure, imaging showing diseased kidneys, very sophisticated forgery. Why would Cortez do that? Because he was running an organ trafficking operation. We found 7 other cases besides yours, 7 other donors who were coerced or tricked into giving up kidneys that went to wealthy patients willing to pay cash for off-books transplants. The operation was worth over $2 million. How much did Tyler get? Justin met my eyes. $140,000, deposited into an offshore account 1 week after your surgery. The room tilted. $140,000. He'd sold my kidney for $140,000. Where did my kidney go? To a 61-year-old real estate mogul in Los Angeles named Richard Hartman. Stage 5 kidney disease, net worth estimated at $50 million. He paid $280,000 cash for your kidney. No records, no oversight, completely illegal. Haley spread out bank records. The money trail is clear. We also have text messages between Tyler and Cortez, recovered from Cortez's phone. She pulled up screenshots. I read them, each word burning into my brain. Tyler, my brother agreed. Surgery scheduled July 12th. Easy money. Cortez, you're sure he won't check? My brother's an idiot. He'll never question anything. I told him I'm dying, and he practically threw his kidney at me. I stared at those words, my brother's an idiot, until they blurred. Tyler had written them while I was taking time off work I couldn't afford, while I was preparing to give up part of my body to save his life. There's more, Justin said quietly. Cortez didn't just traffic kidneys from coerced donors. 3 of his 8 victims were homeless people he paid $2,000 each, then harvested their kidneys and told them they'd been paid $20,000. 2 were undocumented immigrants who couldn't report the crime. 1 was a woman with developmental disabilities who didn't fully understand what she was agreeing to. The horror crashed over me in waves. This wasn't just about my brother's betrayal. This was about systematic exploitation of vulnerable people. I want to press charges, I said, against both of them, whatever it takes. The FBI is already involved. Organ trafficking is a federal crime. The FBI raid on Dr. Cortez's home happened at dawn on a Tuesday. Tyler's arrest happened 3 hours later. I was at work when Haley called. They picked him up at his apartment. He tried to run. They found $112,000 in cash hidden in his closet, what's left of the $140,000. He'd spent $28,000 on a new car and designer clothes. What happens now? Grand jury indictment, then trial. Derek, this is going to be public. National news. I don't care about the publicity. I care about justice. The grand jury indictment came down in December. 23 counts including organ trafficking, conspiracy, fraud, and aggravated assault. The media picked up the story immediately. Phoenix organ trafficking ring exposed. Brother sells sibling's kidney for $140. A journalist from the Phoenix Tribune who'd covered organ trafficking cases asked if I'd go on record. I thought about the other 7 victims. Yes, I said. I'll go on record. The article ran in January 2023. Construction worker exposes brother's organ trafficking scheme. It included my full story, photos of my scar. It went viral. The trial began in April 2024. The courthouse in downtown Phoenix was packed with reporters, activists, victims' families. I sat in the front row every single day, watching my brother refuse to meet my eyes. The prosecution's case was devastating. Medical experts testified about the unnecessary surgery. Forensic accountants walked through the money trail. FBI agents presented the text messages, "My brother's an idiot," projected onto screens for the entire courtroom to see. Then came the testimony from the other victims. The homeless man who'd been promised $20,000 but paid $2,000. The undocumented immigrants who couldn't report the crime without being deported. The developmentally disabled woman whose mother testified about finding her daughter recovering from surgery she hadn't fully consented to. My turn on the witness stand came on day 4. I wore my best clothes and tried to keep my voice steady as I described trusting my brother, believing he was dying, waking up with 1 kidney and a lie. "How did this betrayal affect you?" the prosecutor asked. I touched my side, feeling the scar through my shirt. "It destroyed my faith in family. I can't trust people anymore. I lost my girlfriend, lost $12,000 in wages, lost my health. Every day I wake up and remember that my own brother valued money more than he valued me. If you could say something to your brother now, what would it be?" I looked at Tyler for the first time since the trial started. He was staring at the table, his face expressionless. I would say that I loved him. I would say that I would have done anything for him, and I would say that he threw all of that away for $140,000. My voice cracked. I would say that I hope it was worth it. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and read the verdict. On the count of organ trafficking, guilty. On the count of conspiracy, guilty. On the count of fraud, guilty. On the count of aggravated assault, guilty. All 23 counts. Guilty on every single one. Tyler's face went white. Cortez closed his eyes. I felt something break loose in my chest. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Cortez, 18 years in federal prison, medical license permanently revoked, $1.2 million in fines. Then Tyler. The judge looked at him with something that might have been pity or disgust. "Mr. Sullivan, you exploited the most fundamental bond of trust that exists between human beings, the bond between brothers. You convinced your sibling that you were dying, accepted his selfless sacrifice, and then sold his kidney for profit. This court sentences you to 12 years in federal prison and orders you to pay $280,000 in restitution. 12 years. Tyler would be 50 years old when he got out. It should have felt satisfying, but mostly, it just felt hollow. Richard Hartman, the mogul who'd received my kidney, claimed he didn't know it was from a trafficking ring. The FBI couldn't prove he'd known, but his attorneys reached out with an offer. Hartman would undergo surgery to have my kidney removed and placed into a legitimate recipient. "It's your kidney," Haley told me. "You decide where it goes. Give it to someone who actually needs it." The surgery happened in June 2024. My kidney was transplanted into a 34-year-old teacher named Jennifer Walsh, who'd been on the waiting list for 3 years. Her immune system accepted it. She lived. Haley managed to recover $280,000 from seized assets. After legal fees, I received $268,000 plus the $12,000 in lost wages. I stared at the check for a long time. This money that represented my kidney, my trust, my brother's betrayal. Then I called a nonprofit attorney and asked about setting up a foundation. The Organ Donor Protection Network launched in August 2024. We educated people about organ donation scams, provided resources to verify transplant requests. Within 6 months, we'd identified 17 fake donation requests. 17 people who'd almost made the same mistake I had. We also helped 340 legitimate donors ensure their organs went to real patients who needed them. In November 2024, I testified before Congress about organ trafficking. Current law doesn't require DNA verification of donor-recipient relationships, I explained. There's no federal oversight of living donor surgeries. This allows trafficking operations to flourish. The Organ Trafficking Prevention Act passed in December 2024. It required DNA verification for all living donations and federal oversight of transplant surgeries. It wouldn't bring back my kidney. It wouldn't undo Tyler's betrayal. But it might save someone else from living through what I'd experienced. Rachel called in January 2025, almost 3 years after we'd broken up. "I saw you on the news, the Congressional Testimony. I'm proud of you." We talked for an hour. Finally, she asked, "Do you ever see Tyler?" "No, he writes letters from prison. I don't read them. Maybe someday you should. Not for him, for you." That night, I opened the most recent letter. "Derek," it began. "I know you'll probably never read this, and I don't blame you. I know sorry doesn't mean anything after what I did. But I want you to know that I think about it every day. I think about you in that hospital, trusting me completely. And I think about what I did with that trust. I sold it for money that's gone now, money that didn't make me happy even for a second. I traded my brother for cash and a new car. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to know that I understand what I did, and I hate myself for it. You were the only person who ever believed in me, and I destroyed that. I'm sorry." I read it 3 times, waiting to feel something. Anger, sadness, forgiveness. But mostly I just felt tired. Tyler understood what he'd done. He regretted it. But that didn't change the scar on my side, didn't give me back the trust I'd lost. Maybe someday I'd forgive him. Maybe someday I'd be able to think about Tyler without feeling this hollow ache. But not yet. I put the letter back in the drawer and went to bed. In the morning, I'd have more work to do, more people to protect, more stories to tell about the importance of verification and oversight. My kidney was out there somewhere, keeping Jennifer Walsh alive, giving her time with her family. That part, at least, felt right. My sacrifice hadn't been for Tyler after all. It had been for a stranger who actually deserved a second chance at life. And I was still here, still working, still fighting, still trying to make something good from something terrible. One kidney down, but both feet on the ground. Scarred but not broken. Betrayed but not destroyed. That would have to be enough.